The Los Angeles Dodgers organization just experienced the most turbulent and most revealing 24 hours of the entire season. Manager Dave Roberts walked into that clubhouse and made 3 simultaneous designations for assignment from the bullpen, a level of roster restructuring that tells you in the clearest possible terms that the front office has reached the end of its patience with the performance of certain pieces of this pitching staff. And simultaneously with those 3 DFAs, Roberts handed down severe discipline to rushing for what has been described internally as a grave error. A grave error. Those 2 words carry an enormous amount of weight when they come from a manager who chooses his language as carefully as Roberts does. Not a mistake. Not a poor decision. A grave error. Something that crossed a line that the organization could not overlook through the normal channels of coaching and correction. And then Ohtani, the man who has redefined what leadership looks like in professional baseball this season, took a shocking action directed at the bullpen that threw the entire team into a state of disarray that nobody inside that organization had anticipated. And then rushing, the player who had just been severely disciplined by his own manager, directed rude and abusive language at Ohtani. At the greatest player in baseball. The player who had just stood up and done something extraordinary on behalf of this team's competitive standards. The player who deserves more respect from every person in that clubhouse than any other human being in that building. Rushing chose that moment and that man to direct his anger toward. And the consequences of that choice are going to define the next chapter of this Dodgers season. What was your immediate reaction when you heard that Roberts had simultaneously designated 3 bullpen pitchers for assignment, and severely disciplined rushing for a grave error in the same organizational moment? The scale of what happened tells you everything about the pressure that has been building inside this organization over the past several weeks. 3 simultaneous DFAs from the bullpen is not a routine roster management decision. It is a declaration that the front office has assessed specific players, found them significantly below the standard required at this level of competition, and decided that the time for patient development has ended and the time for decisive action has arrived. Each of those 3 pitchers represented a wasted roster spot in the judgment of the organization. And making all 3 moves simultaneously rather than spacing them out over several days tells you that the decision to act decisively was made at the highest level of this organization's leadership, with full commitment to sending an unmistakable message to every other player in that bullpen about what the standard of this franchise demands. Let's talk about Rushing's grave error specifically, because this is the context that makes everything else that happened today more complex and more significant. A grave error in baseball can mean many things. It can mean a physical mistake on the field that costs the team a game in a critical moment. It can mean a conduct issue inside the clubhouse that crosses the standards of professional behavior that this organization maintains. It can mean a decision made in a competitive situation that reflects a fundamental failure of judgment at a moment when better judgment was absolutely required. Whatever the specific nature of Rushing's grave error was, the fact that Roberts chose to apply the word grave to it tells you that it was not something that could be addressed through a quiet conversation or a gentle coaching moment. It required formal discipline, public accountability, and the kind of organizational response that makes the standard clear not just to Rushing but to every player in that room who will now understand exactly where the line is. From a player perspective, what does it feel like inside that clubhouse when 3 teammates are designated for assignment, and a 4th teammate is severely disciplined, all in the same organizational announcement? This is the most emotionally complex situation a professional sports team can find itself in during the middle of a competitive season. Everyone in that room processes it differently. Some players feel relief that decisions have been made that they believe needed to be made. Others feel anxiety about what the series of disciplinary actions says about the organizational climate and about their own security in the roster. Others feel the weight of the uncertainty that comes with rapid roster change at a critical point of the season. And all of them are trying to process these feelings while simultaneously preparing to compete at the highest level of professional baseball in games that matter enormously for this franchise's championship aspirations. Managing that emotional complexity while maintaining competitive focus is one of the most difficult challenges any manager faces, and Roberts is navigating it in the most challenging possible set of circumstances. Now let's address what Ohtani did. Because calling it a shocking action toward the bullpen is a description that raises more questions than it answers, and the baseball world deserves a fuller understanding of what specifically happened and why it qualifies as shocking when it involves a player whose public conduct has been as consistently measured and as consistently professional as Ohtani's has been throughout his entire career. Ohtani's action threw the entire team into disarray. That phrase, "threw the entire team into disarray," tells you that what he did was not subtle. It was not a private comment made behind closed doors that gradually became known through the internal communication channels of the organization. It was something visible. Something that every player in that building experienced simultaneously. And the fact that it came from Ohtani makes it something that carries a weight that the same action from any other player simply would not carry. When Ohtani acts outside his characteristic professional composure, the entire team feels it because the entire team understands what it means when the person who sets the standard for composure in this clubhouse steps outside of it. What does Ohtani's shocking action toward the bullpen tell us about where he is emotionally and competitively at this point of a season that has subjected him to an almost continuous stream of extraordinary pressures, both personal and organizational? This is the question that deserves the most careful examination. Ohtani has been carrying an enormous burden this season. The two-way demands. The health concerns about his knee. The equipment controversies. The team brawls. The conduct situations involving multiple teammates. The organizational turbulence that has surrounded him at every turn. A person can maintain their composure through an extraordinary amount of difficulty before something gives way. And when the person who has been absorbing all of that difficulty without visible reaction finally takes a shocking action in the direction of the part of this team that has been its most consistent source of frustration and failure this season, it tells you that even Ohtani has a threshold. And the bullpen situation crossed it. And then rushing directed rude and abusive language at Ohtani. This is the element of today's story that the baseball world is finding most difficult to comprehend. Because Rushing has just been severely disciplined by his manager for a grave error. He is in the worst professional position he has occupied all season. He is standing in a clubhouse that has just watched 3 of his teammates get designated for assignment. And in that moment, that specific moment of maximum organizational pressure and maximum personal accountability, he chose to direct his anger and his frustration at Shohei Ohtani. The choice of target is everything here. Ohtani did not create Rushing's situation. Ohtani did not cause Rushing's grave error. Ohtani has been nothing but a professional and a competitor and a leader in every interaction with every teammate throughout this entire season. For Rushing to respond to his own disciplinary situation by directing rude and abusive language at the person who least deserves it in that clubhouse is a reflection of a character flaw that no amount of organizational management can fully address. What are the immediate consequences that will follow from Rushing's decision to direct abusive language at Ohtani, and how does the organization respond to a situation where a player who has already been severely disciplined for a grave error compounds that discipline by attacking the most important person in the organization verbally? The answer to that question will define the remainder of Rushing's time with this franchise. Organizations can work with players who make mistakes on the field. They can work with players who struggle through difficult stretches of performance. They can even work with players who react poorly in heated moments of competitive frustration. But there is a limit to what any organization will tolerate when a player repeatedly directs hostility at the foundation of everything that organization is trying to build. Rushing has now crossed that line twice. And the Dodgers' response to this latest incident will tell us whether he will be given any further opportunity to cross it again. Roberts made his moves. Ohtani took his action. Rushing made his choice. And the Los Angeles Dodgers are now navigating the most complicated internal situation of this entire championship season. What comes next will reveal everything about what this team truly is when the pressure reaches its absolute peak.